Of course you don't recognize me anymore. I haven't been myself since you packed up your bags and left me. No, I don't blame you. No one can sustain 40 years of attention. I'm not that special. When one of our friends got remarried, you said, ah, I feel like an underachiever. The fact is, I feel like an overachiever. It would have been much easier going from man to man than sticking to a slippery surface like you. When you and your lab assistant flew off to Guam, you left a domestic robot to babysit me. You said you wouldn't be back until the pandemic was over and thought I'd need some company. Gulp was freshly minted. You named him Gulp because you'd fashioned him as your personal golem. Your lab assistant gulped when she first saw him. I was afraid Gulp would murder me in my sleep. Those military androids you've been working on in Guam are designed to go after mammal heat. On the battlefield, a warbot can't tell the difference between a soldier and a stray dog. But you gave me instructions on what to do if Gulp went haywire. You said,
Whoa.
simple. A child could do it. You just press on the temples, press hard and deep until you pop the membrane. Then you feel around inside until you find this little button. You called it the sweet spot. And Gulp's rendered completely harmless. I've never pressed on anyone's temples, including yours. No, darling, no. You weren't thinking I'd need some company holed up by myself in the middle of a pandemic. I was helping you. No, not the other way around. You yourself said, Jeannie, just think how much you'll be doing to further science if you actually turn Gulp into a human being. Well, Gulp proved to be an excellent student. He listened to me with rapt attention, the way my sophomores did at Ringe and Latin, the way your grad students did at Harvard. You told me that the sad thing about Gulp was that he couldn't talk. But that was fine with me. With you, I couldn't get a word in edgewise. Gulp could only say, uh-huh. But he gulped things down. What I said instantly became a part of him. I told him, you aren't like us. You weren't born. You won't die. You enjoy eating, but you don't pee or poop. You don't burp or fart. Oh, you're very lucky. We spend a good part of our day burping and farting, especially at the beginning and endings of our lives. Do you know what he did? He let out a burp, and then with much more effort and satisfaction, he let out a fart. I said, whoa, in this pandemic, we can do things the moment we feel the need. What a relief. Gulp had all of Wikipedia filed away in his mind, but he had no personal memories. He looked like an adult, but how could anyone be an adult unless he was once a child? I woke up one morning to find Gulp studying my face, like a baby seeing his mother's face for the first time. He came in close, sitting on my bed, and went cross-eyed with interest. I showed him how to wiggle his tongue, and he immediately wiggled his tongue. Exactly, just like that. And then our tongues touched. Next came the moment that you have been dreading. He tried to lift up my sweater. I said, we humans don't remove each other's clothes. It's considered very immodest. Even worse than burping or farting. What? Then I thought, yeah, what's the harm? I pulled my sweater up for the sake of science. for the sake of your experiment. He cupped my breasts in his hands. He fingered one of my nipples the way a baby would. It was clear he wanted to suckle at my breast. Oh, I am convinced, by the way, that is the origin of the kiss. The baby and the breast. The next day, he kissed me like an adult. Yes. Oh, yes. I'm very well aware that you deliberately left out a critical part of his anatomy. But a robot can be endlessly inventive.
Oh.
He was like a giant octopus exploring me with his tentacular love. He held me in his arms and sucked the moisture and goodness from under my neck, behind my knees. He sucked the marrow from my backbone, vertebra by vertebra.
Whoa.
Oh, don't look so shocked. No, you should be proud of your creation. He was large and beautiful. He looked as if he were made of sand, golden sand. He didn't have that metallic look your warbots have. He was full of human imperfection, not digital perfection. Oh, my withered ovaries plump dried up when I saw him. You left us cooped up alone for nearly a year. What do you expect? No, I'm not sick. You've never observed any borders, any boundaries when it comes to love. I did the same. We did it on all the guest beds. Where you're sitting right now, on your desk in the study, but mostly on our bed. Oh, I felt like a salt-baked chicken. Just hammer off my 2-inch crust and you get to my perfectly formed, plump and juicy self. Surprisingly, not too salty. Came back from Guam at exactly the wrong time. You never bothered to tell me that you were coming back because one of your warbots went berserk and nearly burned down the lab. So you pushed open the door without knocking and caught me without a blouse and Gulp without his trousers. No! Don't interrupt. This is my story, not yours. You went berserk just like the warbot in your lab. In a few minutes, you destroyed everything good in the world. Gulp didn't defend himself. He knew nothing about hate or violence. You stomped on him like a child stomping on a sandcastle. You put your hands on either side of his head and pressed hard on his temples until you almost reached his sweet spot. No, stop! Do you remember what you said before you ran out of the house like a madman? You said, you had much more important things to do with your time. You'd give us a few days to say our last goodbyes, and then you would be back to take Gulp to the lab, disabled, but with his thoughts still churning. Then your team would take him apart, nut and bolt. Well, things didn't go exactly as planned. The morning after your visit, Gulp stood by the door waiting for me. He leaned a moment against the wall to steady himself. We had never left the house since you left us alone together. It must have been 3-4 months. The sun was blinding. Black specks flew across our field of vision like a flock of blackbirds. And when we walked to my car, our two shadows merged and became one. We drove all the way to Crane's Beach, where I loved to go as a child. We sat together on the sand. We took it all in, the water and the sky. Oh, he was in his element. The night before, when he hugged me, he felt like sand and he smelled like fire. But now, he was beginning to smell like a human being, an old human being, the way I remember my 90-year-old mother smelling, briny like salt and vinegar, like a pickle. It was stormy, and the tide was coming in. I held his head on my lap. The first big wave drenched us, and he didn't move. No, a crack appeared on his forehead, but his face was so beautiful, so solemn. And then his arm fell away from his torso. Another wave came in. The last time I kissed him, all his features had washed away.
Mm.
That night, I was awakened by a sharp cry, like a baby being born. It was followed by the sound of someone struggling to break free. From the bedroom door, I watched as a naked man tumbled off the living room sofa onto the floor. Oh, that's right. He wasn't a robot. He was a man with all his human parts.
Mm.
He desperately tried to brush off the wet sand that covered his body, and when he opened his eyes, he was blinded by the light. He stood up, he took an uncertain step forward, and then backpedaled, tumbling to the ground. He called out in a man's voice, "Jean! Jeannie! Where are you?" He never saw me, standing barefoot in my nightgown. I stopped breathing, holding on to my waking dream. He turned toward me, but he didn't see me.
Wow.